Hey guys, and welcome to my British Civ Overview. In this video, I'll be going over the unique units and technologies of the British, as well as the unique end team cards they have access to, and finally wrapping up with some gameplay where I go over how the Civ plays overall. So to get it started off, let's go ahead and go over the civilization bonus. Manor spawns a settler when built. So basically this means whenever you build a house, one extra settler will pop out, and they'll start out idle, so you'll need to retask them. And this kind of goes into just the general British playstyle, which is really all about booming. So what you can do in the Commerce Age is you can basically build all your houses and get, around like 50 villagers kind of right away. And from there you can kind of go straight to the Industrial Age. So this Civ bonus basically means that the British are one of the best booming Civs in the game. And they have one of the fastest Industrial Age times in the game also. So the Civ bonus is very good and kind of defines how the Civ plays overall. Which is very economy focused, very good at booming, but also still decent in the early game, but especially good when they're able to be left alone to their own devices and able to boom. So now let's move on to their Royal Guard units, and these will generally be kind of your main units that you're building later in the game as the British, and these are the Musketeer or the Redcoat, and the Hussar or the King's Lifeguard. So the Musketeer, this is one of the best Musketeers in the game from the British, and this is just because it's a Royal Guard unit and it has access to a lot of other kind of unique British upgrades to the Musketeer. So fully upgraded, the Redcoat is one of the strongest Musketeers in the game, I think alongside the Portuguese Musketeer. So very strong, good kind of base infantry unit that'll make up a big part of your army. And then we have the Hussar, which is obviously just the normal hand cavalry with the sword. And another very good cavalry unit. And normally in the later game, you'll just be kind of building Musketeers and Hussars as the main portion of your army. And this combo, it can be pretty deadly from the British because they'll just be able to keep spamming this out because of their amazing economy. And since these are both very strong units, they have a very formidable army alongside the rest of the units they have access to. Which next we have the Longbowmen. So the Longbowmen is a pretty interesting unit. Normally you'll be building them earlier in the game, so people can go for like a longbow pikeman combo early in the game before you get access to the Musketeers and the Hussars, or are able to build them in mass. And the Longbowmen basically replace the Skirmisher for the British. And it's kind of interesting. So the Longbowmen have a higher range than Skirmishers. However, they also do less damage, or less effective damage. So the way it works is they have a faster fire rate than Skirmishers. However, they have a time to draw the bow. So it basically means that when you're going to fight enemies, they're going to take a second to actually draw their bow and shoot before they actually fire their arrow, whereas skirmishers will just come up to you and shoot you right away. So it essentially means longbows are a lot worse at being mobile because you have to draw your bow every time you want to shoot someone, so they can't kite effectively. However, on defense, they can still be decently useful because you can just sit them behind a wall or sit on a choke point with them, and they'll still they'll do better effective DPS than the skirmishers. But yeah, like I said, worse at mobility and just taking pop shots at people. In terms of more details about their stats, so they have the normal 2x bonus versus light range cav and 0.75x bonus versus all cav, which is the same as skirmishers. However, they have a 1.25x bonus versus heavy infantry, whereas normal skirmishers have a 2x bonus versus heavy infantry. So compared to normal skirmishers, they'll actually be a little bit less effective versus heavy infantry, but versus all other unit types, they'll be putting out slightly higher DPS. And then, like I said, they have a longer range. They also have less hit points than normal skirmishers. So those are kind of, that's kind of what you get instead of a normal skirmisher as the British. And then honorable mention, I'll go to the rocket in a second, but aside from the longbow, honorable mention to the grenadiers of the British. So the British have one of the best grenadiers in the game. And in the original version, they actually had a higher damage, HP, and better blast radius, splash radius than other Civilization Grenadiers. I think this has been normalized in Definitive Edition. However, they do get unique cards for the Grenadiers that basically make them better than other civs. So overall, if you want to be using Grenadiers, the British are a pretty good bet since they can get some better upgrades for the Grenadiers. So definitely a good Civ if you want to use those also. And then for their last unique unit, we have the Rocket. And then this is their basically their heavy artillery unit that you get instead of heavy cannons. Similar to the Great Bombard from the Ottomans. I think in some cases this is better than the Great Bombard. I think it does slightly lower damage generally. However, against cavalry in particular, they don't have the same damage reduction versus cavalry that the Bombards do. So you'll notice if you try to shoot cav with the Great Bombard, it usually does barely any damage. Whereas with a rocket, it will do a lot more damage. So in the case where cavalry actually are able to get to your rocket, they still have a slight chance at actually killing them off, whereas bombards, are totally screwed in that situation. So overall, yeah, pretty good heavy artillery unit, definitely worth getting. And I forgot to mention, I think they have a slightly faster fire rate too. So they'll fire faster, do a little less damage, but less damage reduction against cavalry. So overall, pretty good heavy artillery and definitely a fun unit to use in the rocket. So with that, let's go and check out their unique monastery upgrades. So if we scroll over here, we see that the main one that you're going to want to be looking at is Thin Red Line. So your infantry hit points are up by 20%, but your speed goes down by 25%. So on the surface, you might not think this is very good, because you're giving up 25% speed for more hit points, but you might think being mobile is more important. And that can be true in certain cases. It really depends on the game. But I think in a lot of cases, for musketeers, if you're just marching them up and you're just going to keep shooting, or same with the longbowmen too, then really you're going to value the hit points over the speed. So it's very situational, but I think in a lot of cases, as a British, you can use the speed of your hussars with the higher survivability of your musketeers to form a strong front line. And that's a pretty good combination. So this is definitely a church upgrade you at least want to consider and a lot of times actually get. Just make your musketeers in particular extremely tanky. So it's pretty nice to have. And one of my games actually built only musketeers, and with this upgrade I think they had around 400 hit points as a musketeer, which is pretty crazy. So it was fun to see them just withstand so much punishment. For the other unique monastery upgrades, they have the Black Watch and Rogers Rangers. These are pretty much doing the same thing. So this one is just sending 8 Highlanders, which are just better versions of a skirmisher. And then this will send 26 guard skirmishers. So overall, the British unique monastery upgrades are very good. So this one is just kind of good in general for your musketeers, but these two are basically covering the weaknesses of the British. So the British's main weakness is to a massive heavy infantry supported by artillery. So in this case, you have Highlanders and skirmishers to offset that. So if the enemy does do that, and they're just massing all this heavy infantry, and you need some kind of hard counter to that, well, then you can end up sending these shipments to do that hard counter and actually push off of that. So I think, yeah, I mean the British have probably some of the best unique monastery upgrades, just because not many civs have their weaknesses specifically covered by their cards, whereas in the case of the British, their main counter in a spam of heavy infantry is covered in this case by having these upgrades that you can send if you need to. So that's pretty cool to see. Shows you kind of the versatility of the British. So they're able to adapt to a lot of different situations. So with the unique monastery upgrades done, the revolutions, so they can revolt into either the US, Egypt, South Africa, and Canada. So those are your 4 revolution options if you want to go that route. I haven't tried too many of them out as a British, but try them out and let me know what you guys think. But yeah, I think those are all the unique technologies and unique units for the British. So with that, let's go ahead and hop into the cards so you guys can get an idea of what kind of decks you're going to be building. So now onto the unique and team cards for the British. First, we'll start off with the unique cards. So we have Florence Nightingale, all manners slowly heal nearby units. I don't really take this card too much. I'm not sure if other people think this card is really good, but I haven't really found much use for it. I could see it maybe being useful for like an early aggression strategy where you want to keep your troops alive and go for a big push. But I usually play a lot of team games, not so much 1v1s. But I suppose if you're going for early aggression with longbows and pikes, that this might be useful if you put, like a forward house, you go back to heal in it, and something like that, and just keep your troops alive. So maybe experiment with it, see if it works for you. But if you're playing team games and stuff like that, probably won't be very useful. I didn't put this card in, but 3 settlers is usually what you'll kind of be going as the British to start off with. Just a really good card for a lot of civs. Any civ that has 3 settlers, you'll usually be taking it first. It's just such a good boost to your economy overall. It's almost, it's very hard to pass this up. So 3 settlers generally, the main card you're always going to be taking in exploration age. And the second card you'll almost always be taking, or you probably should always take, is Virginia Company. Manors are cheaper, so wood cost is down by 35%. So the British's whole boom strategy of building all their houses, getting all those extra villagers, getting up to a high villager count very early. A lot of that is centered around this card in particular. This makes the house cost, I believe, go from 140 to 87 wood, I believe. So a very big reduction in wood costs, and it allows you to get those houses out very quickly. And every new villager you get, you can just retask them to wood, and you can get up to your house limit in no time. So this is part of what makes them such a good booming civ. And I'm gonna skip over to this one real quick because it kind of goes along with what I was just talking about. So one thing some people do is what's called a livestock boom. And so this card gives you villagers gather food from livestock much faster, so by 300%. So this is a crazy big boost to like your gather work rate for herded animals. And you see they have some other cards around actually getting these livestock, but even if you just make a livestock pen, you can just train these and you can, pump out these livestock and just, use them to get more food. 300% gather rate increase is pretty insane. So these 2 cards combined just basically is what allows the British to boom so hard all the way up to the industrial age. So you definitely want to be looking at these 2 cards, especially this card if you don't want to go for livestock boom, but if you do want to try that, then you can take this card and go for that. But yeah, those are kind of your 3 main exploration cards you want to be looking at, is the 3 settlers, the housing card, and then this if you want to go for a livestock boom. Aside from that, we have whale oil. New methods of rendering whale oil at sea allow your fishing boats to gather from whales significantly faster. Obviously very good if you're on a naval map, otherwise, you're not going to take this. But yeah, gather work rate for whales plus 35%. This seems useful to me to take as maybe a 3rd or 4th card if you want to go for a really hard boom on a naval map. Because, you're going to still want the housing decrease. You might still want the livestock. And you're probably going to want, I don't know if the British get it, but schooners, if you have it for the fishing boat cost reduction. Actually, so they do have schooners, so you're probably going to want to take schooners before you even take this anyways. So probably a 3rd or 4th card if you're going for a naval boom. So to me, it's kind of like a lower priority card, unless you have some strategy specifically where you need a lot of gold from a naval map, in which case maybe you prioritize this. So to me, it seems like a little bit of a niche card. I wouldn't normally take this. Then we have distributivism. For the rest of your game, a small trickle of wood enriches you, 1.25 to wood trickle rate. So this is a good card, but I think I never take it as the British. So with some other civs, I would definitely consider this, but the thing about the British is you're going to be getting these settlers out so fast with these houses that you're not even really going to, have time for this trickle rate to kick in. So yeah, and when are you going to take this card? Because your first 2 cards are going to be settlers, and manors are cheaper. I don't know when you would even decide to take distributivism. At that point, it would already be pretty far into the game. So to me, unless you're planning on going for a super long game where you think you're really going to need this, I wouldn't even worry about this as the British. I think there's other better cards, and you're going to be booming so hard that it's really not going to matter. You should be able to get to Industrial Age and get your 2 factories anyway to make up for the wood. You shouldn't really need this card. Next, we have South Sea Bubble. When the shipment arrives, all your current coin is exchanged for a greater amount of wood. I think of this card kind of the same way I think about the wood card. I think, like a lot of these types of cards, I could see their use in a treaty game, but in normal games, I just don't really see the point normally. I mean, as British, you're probably not going to be getting a lot of coin anyways. Like maybe you could think about combining this with, this whaling one. You're trying to go for a gold strategy. But, again, you're putting 2 cards toward that, and like what are you really going to get out of it? Probably not that much. So, in general, I don't ever take this card. Also don't play many treaty games. So, maybe if you're playing treaty games, there's some super useful strategy you can use with this card. But for me as a British, I just don't see it. I don't see a time when you're going to have such a surplus of coin that it's really going to make that big of a difference. So to me, I don't see it, but maybe you guys have a strategy centered around this that you can let me know in the comments. So next onto the Commerce Age. These aren't unique to the British, but obviously they're just unit cards. So first we have the 6 Longbowmen, 6 Musketeers. So these are just, general good Commerce Age shipments to send, either for defense, Musketeers on defense if you need that, or if you're going for some kind of longbow pike strategy, take the Longbowmen if you're planning on early game aggression. So for me, I usually play team games. I'll usually end up taking 6 Musketeers just in case they go for an early attack. I can, send this card out and get a little bit of a military going. But yeah, I mean, in 1v1s, these will be really good, obviously, as are most of the unit cards. But yeah, so maybe if you're doing team games, just take 6 Musketeers. If you're doing like a 1v1, you probably just want to take both of these if you're planning on early aggression. So it just depends on what you're playing. And then we have kind of the normal, infantry attack upgrades. So we have Musketeer and Grenadier attack increase. So notice, it does affect Grenadiers as the British. And then we have cavalry attack upgrades, 15%, cavalry hit points upgrades, 15%. Notably, you don't have infantry 15% hit point upgrade in the Commerce Age, it looks like. So you're not going to be getting that yet. Oh, that's right, because that's the net team card, which we'll get to in a second. So instead of having it as a normal card, they have it as a team card. And then lastly, we have offshore support. And this one is one of the cards that actually makes the British have a very good navy as well. So warships have more range. So it adds 2 range to broadside attack range, adds 2 line of sight, 15% overall damage. So basically adds range, adds line of sight, and adds 15% damage increase. So this is an incredibly good card if you're playing a naval map. I mean, you can send this in Age 2, which is pretty crazy. So it makes the British have one of the best navies in the game, alongside other civs like the British and so on. I'm not too familiar with like the indigenous or the native tribes navies or the Asian navies, but I know amongst the European civs, they're definitely one of the best. So next we have the Yeoman longbow range increased. Adds 4 to range attack, adds 4, and adds 4 line of sight. Adds 4 to maximum range, I should say. So this is pretty good. I mean, if you're going for a longbow strat, I just recently played a game where I was only building longbows, so I got this card. And it is pretty fun to kind of play the British like you would in AOE 2 and just kind of mass longbowmen. It's definitely not an incredibly strong strategy just because they're so weak versus cavalry and so weak versus buildings. But if you're going for some early aggression with longbows and pikes, maybe you age up to Age 3 and you still want to build longbows, maybe this fits into your deck. But I would say generally, unless you specifically want to build longbows and you recognize that they're not amazing, they're usually just more of a fun unit to build. Because at this point in the game, you're going to be trying to transition to Musketeers and Hussars. So this card probably won't be that useful at this point in the game. Maybe if this was an Age 2 card, it could be useful in a longbow strat. But to me, I don't see this card as being very useful unless you're in a niche situation or you just want to have some fun and build a lot of the longbows. So next we have the normal infantry and cavalry attack cards. So infantry hit points and attack up by 15%, and then cavalry same thing, hit points and attack up by 15%. So obviously that's good for your Musketeers and your Hussars with these 2 cards. And then we have the other naval unique card for the British naval gunners. Warships attack increased by 20%. So these kind of 2 navy cards combined are one of the things that makes the British very good at naval warfare. Not to mention that they're their good economy also helps. But yeah, these 2 unique cards definitely make them have one of the best navies in the game. And then on to the Industrial Age unique cards. So this is what I was talking about earlier with the Grenadier cards. So Grenadiers do more damage, especially versus buildings. So their siege attack damage is up by 25%, and their just normal damage is up by 20%. So this is a pretty big upgrade to your Grenadiers. That's a lot of extra siege damage. So definitely good to get if you're planning on using a lot of Grenadiers. And then we have, I just threw this in here, but they'll have a two rockets infinite card. You also have, you know, a 3 Congreve rockets card as well. Just because the rockets are one of their unique units, I thought I'd throw it in here. Fun card to get if you like using the rockets, which I would definitely recommend using in the late game. They are very good. But yeah, I mean, you can also just get these from their 2 factories, so it depends on kind of how you want to do it. But yeah, definitely try out the rockets. They're a lot of fun. And then lastly, we have estates. Manors can slowly train settlers, but town centers will train them slower as well. So I have been putting this card in my deck, but I find myself pretty much never using it. I definitely see how you could use this card in more of like a 1v1 and 2v2 kind of game. But in big team games, if you're, you know, you're already going to probably boom off of like 2 TCs if you age up with the 1 town center, or 3 TCs if you want to build 3 town centers with the ward you get. So to me, I mean, I'm pretty much able to get up to the 80 or 90 villager count with just my 3 town centers just fine. And by that time, I'm already villager capped in the industrial age, so I've pretty much never actually used this card, even though I do put it in my deck. I mean, it would obviously be useful if they killed a lot of your villagers and you need to rebuild them. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I've seen a lot of people put this in their decks, but you know, personally, I just haven't found a lot of use out of it. I mean, I feel like just build 3 town centers and you should have plenty of villager production. I don't think you need this much more, but it's up to you, obviously. If you want to go for a very high villager count, maybe in like a treaty game, this would be good. If you just want to go all eco and then like delete your villagers, build up a huge military, maybe that's the situation this would be useful. But I think in a lot of normal games, I personally haven't found a lot of use out of this card. If you have, yeah, I mean, let me know in the comments. I'd be curious to hear. With that, let's go on to their team cards. So they have Team 4 Sheep. So you know, send 4 sheep to your team. I mean, I'm probably going to say pretty much the same thing for all these, but just right off the bat, I mean, it's just 4 sheep. You know, you have the huntables, just use your hunts. Obviously, you know, this could be useful for livestock boom. I mean, you could do something pretty clever if you go for livestock boom, have all your team send the sheep to you. So this would then, in essence, be 16 sheep. I mean, that could be pretty powerful, but unless you do it with a coordinated team, to me, this just seems like kind of mediocre. And you have to remember, you're already going to be taking your 3 settlers and your Virginia Company cards to start off with, plus you need this livestock card. So that's 3 cards. So you're not even going to be able to send this until like probably, you know, you're already thinking about the Fortress Age by the time you're going to think about sending this. So that's kind of what I'm going to say for a lot of these is they're just generally, you know, not good enough to put in the deck, in my opinion, because by the time you could use them, you wouldn't even want to use them because you're already so late in the game that it would be pretty much useless. So then we have Team Wool Staple Ports Livestock Fat and Faster. And the gather work rate for villagers is increased for them. So yeah, kind of the same thing. I mean, obviously it's decent with your already you know, filling mills, the 300% rate. This is just even more, but it's only 20% more. It is for your whole team. So I don't know. I think it's already increased by 300%. They will fatten faster and they give me more experience points, but I don't know. For the same reasoning as before, I think by the time you're thinking about taking this card, it's just too late in the game for it to make sense. But, you know, I haven't really tried it out. It's just my initial impression is it wouldn't be very useful. So maybe try it out and see how it works for you. And then we have Team Fast Building Houses, minus 90% build time. I'm not going to spend too much time on the rest of these because I'm just going to repeat myself, which is that, you know, it seems pretty good, like 90% build time. Like they're going to build super fast. But again, you know, you're going to send this as your 3rd or 4th card. You're already going to have built all your houses by the time you're going to send this. So what's the point at that? You know, at that point in the game, you're already going to have built all your houses. So it seems kind of pointless to me. Team Cheap Docks, you know, would cost your docks is lower. I could see this one being thrown in like a navy boom because you know that is kind of the different thing about building fishing ships and stuff is you're not going to build that till a little bit later in the game. So maybe you send your first two cards, you send this third, and you build your dock and you start your fish boom. But then you're sacrificing wood for instead taking like the whaling card. So instead of gold, you're sacrificing wood. So I don't know. It's kind of up to you. But again, it's a team card, so it would help everyone on your team. So yeah, I don't know. If you're on a naval map and the map is mainly around naval combat, I could definitely see this being useful just to help your entire team out throughout the game. In that very unique case, I would say definitely take this. But otherwise, don't worry about it. And then team run distillery, team villagers gather coin from estates and rice paddies faster. I mean, it's not terrible, but I mean, you're not going to be building estates till probably almost industrial age. So by that time, you might as well just be getting refrigeration, or what is it? Sorry, royal mints. You might as well just get royal mints for yourself. I mean, it's a better card for yourself, and yeah, it's a team card, but I mean, it's not amazing. Like that's gonna be pretty late in the game. They can send royal mint themselves. You shouldn't have a big gold problem if you're in a big team game like that. And if you're in like a smaller team game like a 2v2, it shouldn't even go to that. It shouldn't be that long of a game unless you're in treaty or something. So maybe if you're doing a long treaty game, consider this card, but in a normal game, I wouldn't take this card. Then, of course, you have Team 2 Surgeons. One card I just always kind of skip over. I just generally don't find them very useful, so I never take this card. And then we have Team Musketeer Grenadier hit points. Like we mentioned earlier, this actually is a pretty good card, and I almost always take it in larger team games, or even smaller team games would be useful. And maybe even a 1v1 you consider it, just because the British aren't getting their normal Musketeer HP upgrade. So you're getting it from this team card. So just note that they get the attack upgrade from this card, but from their hit points upgrade Musketeer for the Commerce Age, you can only get it from this team card. So yeah, I mean, this is a really good card if you're going for a lot of Musketeers, which you probably will be. So I almost always take this card. And then we have Team Monitor Combat, so Team Monitor attack and hit points increased. Similar kind of thinking just for naval maps. If you're on a naval focus map, then obviously you're probably going to want this for everyone on your team to have better monitors. And I mean, you could combine this with other civs where they get the monitor range upgrade and stuff. I mean, you could get some pretty crazy monitors, honestly. So you could go for some navy strat like that, and it would be really good. But in most games, you probably won't be taking this because most games aren't naval focused. But it just goes along with the fact that the British have a very good navy. Combined with this, that's just one other navy upgrade card that they can get that just make their naval force very good. So with that, that's all their unique and team cards for the British. So now let's hop into some gameplay so you guys can get an idea of how the Civ plays overall. So now to the gameplay. So in both of these games, I was playing large team maps. So one was a 3v3 and one was a 4v4. And in both of these, I was basically booming straight up to the industrial age. And I think that's where the British are really in their prime. If they're left, uncontested, unattacked in the early ages, and they're able to rush straight up to the industrial age and then start pumping out troops, they'll just have such a massive economy advantage above almost every other civilization in the game. Plus the fact that they have very strong units at that point, and musketeers and hussars, that it's very hard for other civs to compete with that. The civilization bonus with the houses spawning idle villagers from them does mean that the British are a bit of a higher skill cap civ, but I think that also makes them pretty fun to play. It gives you something to do in the early game that you have to manage constantly. They also have a lot of versatility because they have longbows with pikes for early aggression or to defend against rushes effectively, and then boom behind that for 1v1 or 2v2 games. So generally that gives you a strong enough early game to hold out against most enemy rushes in the game while getting the economy advantage into the fortress age or the industrial age to usually wipe them out. If you're playing against the British and you're able to make it past the late industrial age, You might eventually be able to even the playing field back out depending on your civilization, but that's a big if because the British are really going to be hitting their prime in the early to late industrial age, um, and with their massive economy, will likely be able to steamroll you with their musketeers and hussars, um, backed just by crazy unit output because of their big economy. So you really need to win a lot of engagements against them to actually wipe them out. Their main weakness is if the enemy is massing heavy infantry, because the longbowmen aren't that effective in general. And even against heavy infantry, they're not as good as normal skirmishers. So yeah, the British's main weakness is against a spam of heavy infantry combined with some artillery usually. And the British's main counter to that is only in their unique monastery improvements, which is to get skirmishers. But in a large team game, that's also somewhat nullified because your teammates can just build skirmishers for you. So you're offsetting the British's major weakness and playing a team game also. So yeah, that's basically the British. They're one of the best booming civs in the game, probably the fast industrial age time in the game. A pretty decent early economy and unit production with their longbows and pikemen if you want to go that route. I'm going to be trying out a combination with that new politician to actually do a little bit of a longbow rush, because with one of the politicians, I believe you can build the longbows from their I think outposts or their houses. And then they have a very decent late game also with their musketeers with all their unique upgrades and their Royal Guard hussars. Those in combination with some maybe rocket support or other artillery, mortars, grenadiers, and so on, just make for a very versatile and very strong military with the British, backed by, like I said, of course, the massive economy advantage that they'll have. So a lot of times they'll be able to outproduce you even if they don't win every engagement. So overall, a very strong civilization. One of my favorites, especially in team games, where that you can just build up, your economy without much contest. And honorable mention to their naval options. They also have one of the best European navies in the game because of their unique cards that they have access to, with the cheap docks, improved monitors, and so on, and their increased range and attack, and those kind of cards. So with that, that's pretty much the British. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.